I know, I am over 25 and still love gaming. What can I do? Yesterday night, the kind where a chill permeates the air, seeping into your bones. My buddies and I were huddled in my basement, the glow of the screens and ringing of video game sound effects enveloping us in our little world. We were antsy, constantly checking phones and watches, counting down until our long-awaited revelation. You see, tonight was no ordinary night of gaming and guzzling energy drinks. No, the gods at Rockstar Games had finally granted us loyal fans a gift, the very first trailer for the mythical Grand Theft Auto 6. Speculation had run rampant across forums and subreddits for months, years even, as to what this legendary open-world title would bring. And at the stroke of midnight, we would get our first real glimpse. My heart thudded in my chest as the clock ticked ever closer. I couldn't believe this moment was finally here, the culmination of countless wishful conversations and fan theories. It felt almost too good to be true. That's when Jake had the bright idea that we needed more booze to properly baptize this monumental event. And guess who was the lucky winner nominated for the liquor store run? Yours truly. Bundling up against the howling icy winds, I ventured out into the night, the cold piercing through my many layers. I hurried to the fluorescent lights of the store, scrambling to gather drinks and snacks to replenish our stocks. The clerk eyed me strangely as I fumbled for my wallet, hands quivering more from excitement than cold. Bag laden with goodies, I emerged to find that the weather had taken an even more foreboding turn in my brief time inside. An impenetrable frozen fog had descended, limiting visibility to barely a few feet in front of my face. I felt almost blinded as I slowly picked my way back, cursing under my frosty breath about the situations my friends always seemed to get me into. By some miracle, I arrived back at my doorstep in one piece. I awkwardly juggled the bags, reaching into my pocket for my keys. My hand grasped nothing. The pocket was empty. A rising panic began to squeeze my chest as I desperately patted myself down, finding no keys or phone to be found. I must have dropped them in my hasty exit earlier. The chill creeping into my extremities was now far beyond physical. What cruel twist of fate was this? To be locked outside minutes before our exalted trailer premiere? I banged angrily on the door, calling out to my idiot friends. No response. I stomped to the basement windows, barely able to make out their forms staring intently at the screens. They couldn't hear me over their own ruckus in there. I was utterly stranded in the deathly silent night, the promised trailer time surely ticking by. A boiling frustration warred with bone-numbing despair. Would they even realize I was missing? I pictured myself as a human popsicle, frozen to the doorstep for eternity. At long last, the door swung open to reveal guffawing friends who simply cracked up at my misfortune. They just couldn't resist playing a little prank given my gullibility. Fuming, I stomped past them, violently cracking open a beer in retribution. How could they be so cruel? This was not just any night. We had waited years, fantasized for eons about this singular trailer premiere. And they had almost made me miss it for their moronic amusement. In a spur of perhaps questionable judgment, an idea rooted itself in my churning mind. As I distributed the fresh beers, I stealthily gave a hearty shake of salt across the tops when no one was looking. There, my vengeance would be complete with this harmless gag. Chuckling quietly to myself, I settled onto the couch just as the heavily teased trailer lit up the screens before us. Despite almost freezing to death minutes earlier, familiar goosebumps pricked my skin, watching the sights and sounds of the new GTA world unfold. The minutes ticked by in awed silence among us, until the first spluttering coughs and confused exclamations broke through. I glanced over to see my friends staring accusingly at their beers, perplexed expressions growing increasingly horrified. Then, one by one, they slowly keeled over, slumping to the floor unconscious. I sat frozen in shock and dawning horror, pulse thundering in my ears. What had I done? This wasn't supposed to happen. As I knelt over their lifeless bodies, the trailer's faint explosions and sirens sounded almost like mocking laughter. No one could have predicted such a night would end in an actual murder scene. No one except maybe a serial killer, or me. After an eternity, my friends jolted awake, frazzled but miraculously unharmed. It was just a little joke that went too far, they assured me. But their wide eyes and shaking hands suggested they now wondered what sinister thoughts lurked within my mind. To be honest, I wasn't entirely convinced of my innocence either. In the end, no authorities or ambulances were needed. We sat side by side for the remainder of the trailer, the mood definitively chilled. Every time I glanced sideways, I was met with wary, almost frightened stares. I knew then that nothing would ever be quite the same between us. The lingering doubts and dread had planted an unshakable seed within me. One simple, salty prank had warped into a nightmare scenario from my chaotic subconscious. I fear the darkness brewing inside has been unearthed, and now there is no turning back from the grim descent into my true madness. Who's to say what I'm really capable of? I'm 19, still living with my parents in our Texas home. We've got this cozy basement we've turned into our hangout spot, calling it the man cave. It's where we were, waiting eagerly for the GTA 6 trailer to drop. It was me and a couple of friends, just chilling, playing games, the usual. We had the whole night planned, snacks, drinks, celebratory blunts. My parents were out on their monthly date night and weren't due back until the wee hours. So me, Matt, and Sarah had free reign over the house while we geared up for the big reveal. The trailer was set to premiere at midnight. By 11 p.m., we were amped, glued to our screens, rapid-fire chatting about wished-for features and storyline possibilities. I kept glancing at the clock, willing it to tick faster. The basement had our preferred gaming setup, so it just made sense to view such a momentous event in our trusted man cave habitat. But as the minutes dragged on, the atmosphere seemed to shift. An odd chill permeated the room, despite the constantly running space heater. The normal hums and creaks of the old house felt louder and more unsettling. I shook it off as anticipation jitters, but a creeping unease was taking root. When Matt left to grab another round of drinks, an eerie scraping sound echoed from somewhere upstairs like furniture being dragged across the floor. Sarah and I exchanged puzzled looks. We were home alone, right? We waited for Matt to jump out, yelling, "Gotcha!" for orchestrating some stupid prank. But he returned empty-handed, confusion clouding his face at our questions. My laughter came out strained, an involuntary response to tamp down the fear threatening to rise. Just then, heavy thudding footsteps reverberated above us, too loud to ignore. We all froze, pulses quickening. This had to be Matt's doing, right? But one look at his tight-knit jaw proved even he was unnerved. In unspoken agreement, we decided we had to investigate, a nervous excitement propelling us upstairs. I reached the closed basement door first, heart lodged in my throat. With quivering fingers, I grasped the knob, only for it to halt halfway. It refused to budge another inch, no matter how hard I pushed and pulled. Dread crept down my spine. Something was preventing our exit, trapping us below. Panic flooded through me when the power abruptly cut, submerging us in oppressive darkness. This was no normal Texas blackout. The sudden silence amplified every ragged breath, every terrified whimper. I screamed for my friends, hands blindly grasping at nothing. Their replies echoed as if miles away. In my pocket, an iPhone lit up, casting a dim glow just long enough to illuminate their ashen faces before starting an ominous countdown to black. We huddled close in the last fading light, descending into hysterics about ghosts and demons and evil forces keeping us here. Time lost meaning in that lightless abyss. When my phone finally died, even the illusion of sight vanished entirely. It was just our disembodied whispers and racing heartbeats. Were we trapped in some nightmare? I pinched my skin hard enough to bruise, willing myself to wake up. But only numbness awaited. I clung to a fleeting hope. If I could just get to the fuse box, logic told me I could restore power and end this hellscape. But even with arms outstretched, I met only cold, unyielding walls on all sides. The enclosing darkness became a living, breathing predator, playing twisted games with our sanity. In the end, the only escape came when consciousness itself evaded me. I awoke slumped on the basement floor, weak light casting the room in dawn's gray glow. Groggy confusion clouded my mind until the events came flooding back. The trailer preview, the noises, my vanishing friends, none of it made sense. I bolted upstairs, not even feeling my legs beneath me, just pure desperation and denial pushing me forward. I needed to understand what sinister forces had invaded our sanctuary. But instead, I found only silence. Deafening, impeachable silence, telling me nothing had been real at all. Even now, when I meet Matt's avoiding gaze, my skin prickles with unease. He claims no knowledge of the horrors we endured that night. My dwindling sanity clings to the conviction that something beyond comprehension overtook us. But with no proof or explanation, the doubt has taken root inside, a creeping madness I cannot seem to escape. Horror, right? Yesterday had finally arrived, the day all of us gamers had eagerly waited for years. The official trailer premiere for Grand Theft Auto 6. I had cleared my schedule for weeks, stocking up on enough snacks and drinks to last a month. I was gearing up for an epic viewing party, even if it was just for an audience of one. Me in my living room. I had ordered a pizza from my regular spot to complete the ultimate trailer-watching spread. As the delivery time ticked closer, I realized nature was calling thanks to all the soda I'd gulped down. I ran to the bathroom just as the doorbell rang. Cursing under my frosty breath, I yelled for the guy to leave it on the porch as I frantically tried to wrap up my business. But when I opened the door, plate in hand ready to dig in, my cheerful greeting died in my throat. The delivery man was still standing there on the welcome mat, shifting awkwardly as he gave me an imploring look. "Hey dude, so sorry, but any chance I could use your restroom real quick? I know it's weird, but I've been slammed all day. Been holding it for hours." Every fiber of me screamed stranger danger, but the guy did seem genuinely uncomfortable, and it was just for a minute, right? Hesitantly, I nodded, directing him to the guest bath before retreating to the kitchen. I tried focusing on dishing up steaming slices, but my skin was prickling with tension. The sooner he finished up and left, the better. Just as I was about to call out impatiently, an unmistakable creak froze me in place. That was my bedroom floorboard groaning. Why would he be back there? I crept towards the sound, nerves jangling loudly in my ears. Peering into the dim room, my heart stuttered to a halt. The delivery creep was casually lounging across my bed, flipping through my gaming magazines stacked on the nightstand. It took him a moment to notice me, gaping in bewilderment. He bolted upright. "Oh hey, sorry. Started feeling dizzy and nauseous, so I figured I'd just lie down for a second. Hope you don't mind some company to watch that trailer later." He gave me a conspiratorial wink as he patted the empty bed space beside him. I stood paralyzed in confused terror before my survival instincts kicked in. I demanded he leave that instant, but he merely giggled. "Come on, don't be like that. We're going to be such good friends." He licked his lips as his gaze traveled over me, sending my panic levels through the roof. I turned and fled as a deranged cackle followed me. Slamming the kitchen door closed, I scrambled to lock it before grabbing my phone with a visibly shaking hand. As I dialed the emergency line, the banging and shouting started, the flimsy door threatening to give way any second. I could barely get the words out to the dispatcher, with the maniacal threats booming just feet away. The operator tried calming me, but I was hysterical, convinced I was living out a horror movie finale. At last came the blessed sounds of sirens and uniforms stomping toward my location. The psycho was still screaming about making me pay as the police hauled him away. My legs finally gave out with relief and delayed shock. I recounted my terrifying tale at the station between gulps of water for my parched throat. It turned out the maniac had assaulted the real delivery guy and stolen his uniform as part of some twisted scheme. As the gravity of my ordeal sank in, I shuddered, imagining what he would have done if I hadn't acted quickly. The authorities said I didn't even want to know what went on inside that deranged mind. But the question still nags at me late at night. What exactly did that sick creep have in store for me? Sometimes the shadows hold darker horrors than I care to guess.